Happy Thursday, Soden Bowl. SBN broadcast here. It's S. Soden taking over for the Alpha Heel. He's having date night with the wife tonight, so he will not be with us, so bear with me. Tonight we have a very special guest. I'm very excited here. I've been looking forward to this one. We have Dave, the vice president of Canuck Play Incorporated and a co-founder of Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019. What's going on, Dave?
Things are going well. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. And we have another special guest with us. We have an aspiring broadcaster. He kind of chimes in from time to time, our on-the-field sports reporter, Colids. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. Happy to be here. How about you guys?
I'm doing good. Doing very good. Thank you. So, Dave, welcome to the show. And I guess my first question to you is kind of explain to me what you do and how you got involved with Canuck Play, if you don't mind.
Well, I am the president and co-founder. Cheryl, my partner, and I established Canuck Play in 2016. And I had spent quite a long time in the gaming industry. I've been in for about 20 years, give or take. Worked on various titles, sports titles, comic book titles, some other types of games with large studios like EA and Warner Brothers. And eventually, Cheryl just said to me one day, "It's time for you to do your own thing because you've been working on other people's stuff for so long." And I grew up on football, so the natural choice I thought was, well, I've done sports games in the past, and I've got now this great relationship with Microsoft and Sony. So how about we resurrect a game that I'd done in 2005 called Maximum Football and bring that onto the console. So that is kind of the 30-second summary of how I am here now.
Well, that's interesting. Now, getting into gaming, game design, and what I guess what kind of inspired you, or how did you get started in the gaming industry?
Well, I grew up making games as a kid. Even, I'm probably a little older than a lot of the game players you are used to speaking to. I started making games back in the early and mid 80s on a TRS-80 color computer and a Commodore 64. And I got a lot more enjoyment out of making games than I did playing them. After a while, when I was playing games, I found myself spending too much time trying to figure out, well, how did they do that, as opposed to playing and enjoying the game. I found myself dissecting what other people had done. So I picked that up as a hobby. I did that all through my schooling years and through high school. I made little games as just something that I did for fun. After I left high school, I spent a few years in the Canadian Navy. Not a lot of time to do video game development while you're in the Navy. So that was kind of a big chunk of time where I was not involved in anything gaming. And when I left the armed forces, I got back into doing it as for something of my own. Just ran a small game business out of my basement and had a full-time job. But I caught the attention of Electronic Arts, and a few months after we started speaking, I found myself working at EA as the producer for Sports Online out of Vancouver. And many years later, here I am. So that's kind of how I got into the industry. Is I just spent a long time doing it before I actually did.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for your service, sir. Really appreciate it. Love the Canadians up north. Outstanding military. Um,
Well,
so,
we're small, but we're proud.
so Commodore 64. My first gaming experience was on the Atari. And then
Oh,
I'd say my ultimate favorite game would have to be Tecmo and Tecmo Bowl on the NES system.
Right.
If you could pick any game, past, present, doesn't matter, what would your favorite game be?
A football game or any game?
Any game at all.
I think the game that I played the most would probably I'd probably have to go with Age of Empires, RTS, the original Age of Empires. I played that game to death. Um, in terms of sports games, the game that I played the most was the old Sierra football series for the PC.
Awesome. Yeah, I enjoyed Empire Earth myself. I was a big Empire Earth fan. I like Conflict of Nations. I have a few friends that work for that company now. So yeah, definitely. Now from a game development standpoint, you said that you've developed a few different games, even dating back to the '80s. What is the hardest genre of game to develop?
Well, my opinion is very biased, but I would have to go with sports title. I firmly believe that sports games are the hardest games to make. And I understand that, everybody that works on different types of games thinks that the game they're working on is the most difficult. But one of the things that I always remind people is that sports games are trying to reproduce real life as accurately as possible. When you are doing something science fiction and your character is running through a spaceship shooting green globs at aliens, it's hard to say that's not correct. Nobody really knows what the spaceship looks like or what the aliens are supposed to do or any of that stuff. You have a lot of leeway when it comes to accuracy and realism. But when you're trying to do a sports game, if you're doing a simulation game, then you are striving for as getting it as realistic as possible. And I think that's the challenge. And sports games are so heavy when it comes to AI that a lot of people don't realize, it's not a simple thing to make a defensive back cover a receiver in a realistic fashion. There's a lot going on there. So um, there's a multitude of different AI processes that are going on for a football game and for a sports game in general that a lot of other types of games just don't have. So um, as somebody who makes sports games now for a living, my biased opinion is sports games are the hardest kinds of games to make.
So, with that being said, with a sports game being the hardest, the one thing I do really like about your company is you guys are very active on social media. You're engaging the community. You're over at Operation Sports. Good plug for those guys. Great bunch of guys over there. You're very active within the community. Seems like you're gathering community feedback. You're, um, offering information to people. I guess this is a two part question. My first part is community noise, so to speak. Negative, there's always going to be a negative Nancy out there. How does your company or yourself deal with any of the negativity surrounding, anything with your product? And then my second part of the question is I notice you guys are very, very active, like I said before, in the community. And you guys do have a few things that you're offering community members. So could you go into that after you answer the first question, if you don't mind? Oh, I think we may have lost him. You still there, Dave?
Does look like we are having some technical difficulties.
All right. Do you have me now? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Here we go.
Yeah, that was weird. I crashed there. Did you get any part of that question, Dave?
I answered the question about sports games being the most difficult. I don't know how
Yep.
much of that was heard.
So I have a two. I have. You can hear me okay now, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So I have a two-part question for you. Uh, the first part of the question is, with as active as you guys are in the community, um, how does your company deal with any type of negativity in the community? I notice you guys are on Operation Sports. Great plug for those guys. We love those guys over at Operation Sports. And you guys do listen to a lot of your gamers. And if there's any negative feedback, how do you guys deal with that? That's the first part of the question. Do you kind of ignore the noise, or what do you do? And then the second part of the question is, I notice you guys have some interaction with the community. You guys have a few programs that you're kind of releasing information to the community. Could you kind of elaborate on that for me?
So, in terms of the negative feedback, the thing that I try to keep in mind is that I can only control what I can control. Um, Canuck Play is a minuscule little team with a very tiny budget, and so there's only so much that I can do. Uh, I can only do what I can do. So a lot of the feedback is actually very good, and it does help, and it gives us good directions, and it points us in the right place. There are trolls that really just want to stir things up, and you can often figure out who those guys are, and sometimes the best course of action is to just not feed the trolls. But for the most part, people are just interested in trying to help, and they're trying to be supportive as best they can. And like I said, I just try to do what I can do. Um, in terms of support from the community, we do have things like a Patreon, for example. So if you go to patreon.com/maxfootball, you'll find us there. We one of the things that we do for our Patreon subscribers is give them heads up on announcements. For example, this coming Tuesday, we will be officially announcing that Zenith Helmets is our official helmet manufacturer for Maximum Football 19. So there's a bit of an exclusive for this show. You're getting a bit of a pre-announcement, but that's officially going to be done on Tuesday. But our Patreon subscribers knew about that a few weeks ago. They knew this was coming down the pipe. So things like uh, uh, direct communication with the developers. Maximum Football, because it has such a college-heavy feature set for this year, one of the things that we wanted to do was include a wide collection of names for the different bowl games. And so a lot of the names of bowl games came directly from our Patreon subscribers. So that's kind of how we try to engage our community through Patreon. But we always interact as best we can via Twitter and Discord and Instagram, and we're kind of try to be everywhere in terms of the social media presence.
Yeah. So back to the bowl games. That was one thing that I really wanted to hit on there. Do you still have any openings? Can people still subscribe to that level of Patreon that you have to maybe get a custom name for a bowl game, or those have been all taken now?
No, those are not been all taken. I don't remember the actual bowl count that I saw last, but I'm sure there's room for more bowl game names. We also have, because for 2019, we also have college playoff system. Those games are also have names to them because they would be sponsored games in real life. So we would have them named in our video game. Um, One of the other things that we do for the Patreons is a big part of the college dynasty mode experience for Maximum Football is recruiting your prospects and trying to get them to come to your school and be part of your team. And so you're interacting with your prospects by phoning them and interacting with them via basically sales pitches. And the recruits have personalities, and they will reply back to your various pitches in different ways. And so a lot of the personality, let's say, for the different prospects comes through Patreon and their suggestions for replies to certain pitches given certain situations. So even some of the basic in-game content is coming from our Patreon people.
Oh, that's really cool. That's a great idea, and you don't really see that in the gaming industry these days. Now going from 2018 on the console and going into your 2019 version of the game, your new game, which when is that supposed to release for you guys?
So we have a release window of September, and we will have a better, we will focus on an actual date come around August when we start the certification process for Sony and Microsoft. Once we're in the certification and we get a better idea of the types of feedback we're getting from them, we can say, yeah, this is the date we're going to go with. But we like to keep it just a window until we're further along the development and the cert process.
Awesome. Coolidge, I think you had a couple questions for him too as well, right?
Yes, I definitely did. First of all, one of the things I noticed on the Twitter here was that you offer not only the NFL style rules of football, but the college and even the Canadian Football League. Have you guys kind of geared each mode to kind of replicate it as far as playbook styles and such? Are there going to be more college style playbooks for that mode and so on?
I think we're having some technical difficulties again. Can you hear me now, Dave? And it looks like Dave's mic is offline here, so we'll give it a minute here to kind of reconnect.
No, there I am again.
There you are.
All right, yeah. So we're having some connection problems. I don't know if it's my machine or what's going on.
It's okay. We'll just move right through them here. Were you able to catch Coleid's question?
I did not. The last question I heard was about the community.
Gotcha. Go ahead, Coleidge. You can ask again.
So I'll just rephrase it a little bit less this time because it was a little bit long. But essentially, you're going to have all the different game modes. You're going to have the NFL. You're going to have college. You're going to have the Canadian League. Obviously, each game mode is going to have the rules, the dynamics of the field, and such. Are you guys creating like different sorts of playbooks and different sorts of game styles for those modes because they are sometimes exclusively different?
Yes, we are working on that. Obviously, the Canadian game being 3 downs and 12 men is substantially different than the US game being at pro or the college level because the number of players on the field and the number of downs is the same. But in Canada, with one extra player and one less down, there are some very different plays that you build up. We right now are working with a couple of coaches or a couple of community members that have coaching experience in the United States. They are working on plays and playbooks, and we're working with some community members here in Canada that are doing plays for the Canadian side of the game. So we are working on plays and playbooks that are more representative of what you would see in real life given those rule sets.
Awesome. And then actually something that a question that I thought about while you were answering that. So essentially, will you be able to go in and now choose how many players you want to have on the field? Say you start an exhibition game against whoever. Will you be able to choose, the 12 or the 11? Obviously, you'll be able to set up the times or that third and fourth down. Maybe you want to play NFL style, but have only 3 downs. Is there a way to kind of customize that?
We don't have something that is that granular. Basically, the rule options that you have right now, you pick from the full set of rules. You do have a couple of minor exceptions to that. One of them being the play clock. You can set the play clock to various different values or turn it off completely. That was one of the bits of feedback we had a couple of years ago when we had the Canadian rules, because there's only 20 seconds on a play clock in Canadian football. People were struggling with picking a play and getting it snapped in time. So we gave them the option to lengthen that out to 30 or 40 seconds. So it's really more of a case of you're picking the base rule sets, and then you have a couple of smaller adjustments that you can make on top of that. But for the time being, you're not in a situation. You won't be able to play 12 men on a 100-yard field with 3 downs and no
Of
fair
course,
catch.
of course.
That sort of thing. Yeah.
One thing that I do know that is more so customizable. You can create your own logos. You can create your own uniforms, team names. You were saying. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the control that you'll have?
Right. So with Maximum Football 18, even the edition that came out last year, you have the ability to create your own logo. There's quite a sophisticated logo editor that lets you create any logo that you can think of, pretty much by just moving around some shapes on a canvas. You have a complete uniform editor. You have total control over things like the team name, the city they're from, that sort of thing. You have a roster editor where you can change values for players. You can go in and you can do simple player editors with things like changing the type of helmet they're wearing and that sort of thing. So we try to give as much customization as we can, but still be a feature that is something that we could manage to deliver.
Of
I
course.
I have a question for you, Dave. From a development standpoint, again, how hard is it for your company to kind of switch between, an NCAA style football, American football, if you will, versus the Canadian football? Because I think the Canadian football field is bigger, right? And then I
It
believe
is, yep.
the goalpost is kind of set forward still. Is that correct? It's at the start of the end zone.
Yes. In Canadian football, the goalpost is on the goal line, and for those that may not remember, in fact, I think it was up until the late 70s or early 80s, the NFL had the goalpost on the goal line as well, and then they moved it to the dead ball line. In Canada, we never moved it; we left it on the goal line. So there are differences with the field layout, the configuration, the hash marks are in different places, that sort of thing. And of course, in US college football, the hash marks are in different locations as well. So the game was built from the ground up to accommodate different rule sets. And the stadium artwork the stadiums are built so they accommodate the big field. And obviously, if they're built to accommodate the big field, then the smaller ones fit inside. Um, but in terms of the gameplay and the game mechanics of having multiple rules, that was engineered into the game from the start.
Awesome. So from I guess another development question here, the development crew that you have for Canuck, what, how big is the crew that you guys have? I mean, do you guys have animators, and how many people actually are working for you?
So Canuck Play is 99% me. I have a business
Wow.
partner that operates out of Hamilton, and his name is Eric Spearin, and he manages all things licensing and marketing and setting up the agreements, things like getting Zenith helmets into the game and Wilson footballs and stuff. He manages all that. A few days ago, we brought on another member. His name is Josh, and he is taking over all things artwork related, 2D artwork. So the user interface design and the splash screen and things like social media posts and stuff like that. Anything that requires that kind of two-dimensional artwork, he is taking over that. When it comes to the 3D player models, I am outsourcing. I've hired a 3D modeling company in Montreal to do the player models. So in 2019, there will be completely brand new player models in the game. In terms of animation, we worked with a motion capture studio in Toronto to redo all the motion capture in the game. We've always had motion capture in the game, but we were using a motion capture suit. Basically, it's a suit that you wear on your body, and it has little sensors in it that track your movement. And it was good enough to get us started, and it gave us some animations, and it put us in a position where we could bring a game onto the market and get our foot in the door and start growing. But it has many technical limitations. These suits are really not fast enough to do sports games. And so the decision was made that if we're going to take this game to the next level, then we need to be working with a professional motion capture studio. So they're going to be doing a lot of the animation for us. But in terms of writing the code to make the game do the things that a football game does, that's pretty much me.
That's pretty amazing. So, what does your typical workday look like then?
Well, my I get into the office probably around 8, and I'm usually leaving here around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And I'm also here on the weekends. So it's pretty much a 7 day a week, 12 or 14 hours.
So, it's safe to say then, from a financial standpoint, a lot of the money that the company makes is kind of reinvested into the growth of the company with animation studios and other studios you're kind of outsourcing to make your product better, right?
That's correct. I do not get a paycheck from this yet. My business partners do not get a paycheck from this yet. All the revenue that comes into the game, into the studio from sales or from Patreon goes directly back into paying the costs of making a better game. So it was this year we decided that, you know what, we've the 2018 sales did well enough for us to be able to go and redo all the motion capture. And then we also realized that, okay, well, we also did well enough to go and hire a studio in Montreal to help us redo all the player models. But making those decisions has also meant that we don't get paid. So right now the game is really, we're trying to build it and build it, and I'll deal with getting paid once it's a little bit further along.
So, Doug Flutie. Doug Flutie's kind of the name brand of the company now. Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019. How much inspiration has Mr. Flutie provided for this version of the game?
Well, when Eric came on board back in, I guess, July of last year, and we decided that we really wanted to bring this title to the next level and separate it from other titles, and put us in a solid. We knew that we were not going to take on Madden right off the bat, but these video game market for football games is big enough that we could be a solid number 2 position and do pretty well. So when we decided that that's what we wanted to do, we knew we needed to get a little bit of brand name recognition behind us. And given that Maximum Football plays Canadian football and American professional football and college football, well, we could only think of one name that has excelled in all of those levels, and that was Doug Flutie. So we kind of put him as our number 1 choice, number 2 choice, 3 choice. All the top 10 spots of who he wanted were all filled with Doug Flutie. And so Eric reached out to his agent, and luckily he and his agent were looking to get involved in the gaming space some way, and it just seemed to work out for everybody. We were able to strike up a deal pretty quickly and get things signed off, and it's been really good since then. We're really lucky to have him on board, and just being able to go to a manufacturer like Wilson Sports and say, we are working on Doug Flutie's Maximum Football. Well, now they take more notice of what we're trying to do because everybody knows that name.
So, You mentioned Madden, EA Sports, and obviously you worked for EA.
Mhm.
A lot of EA the last couple years has gotten a lot of flack on the gameplay, especially from the simulation crowd. People that want to play the game like they see on TV versus playing an arcadish type game. I'm not saying Madden is an arcadish type game, but my I guess my question to you is, uh, from a gameplay standpoint, how important, I guess the politically correct statement or the politically correct answer would be gameplay is very important to you, but uh, how do you ensure that Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 from a gameplay standpoint is going to be realistic, so to speak, or kind of like we see on TV?
Well, like I alluded to a little bit ago, one of the big things that we're doing is redoing all of the animations in the game. Um, as I mentioned, we did have motion capture animation, but there are limitations to what we could do with the technology that we had. Now we have much better animations. One of the most glaring differences that you'll see is when we did the animations in 2017 and 2018, and we were using that motion capture suit. Our motion capture was being recorded at 15 frames a second, so 15 frames a second. So um, pretty low quality resolution animations. They were very jerky. The animations that we did uh, a couple of months ago in Toronto, the motion capture animations, the new ones, they're at 120 frames a second
Wow.
recording. So it is a quantum leap difference in resolution when it comes to the animation quality. Lots of the subtle nuances that a human being has when they move were getting lost in the suit because it wasn't recording fast enough. But now every little every little nuance and subtlety of movement is captured, and it looks so much better. So in terms of making the game closer to what you see on television, that's our first step, is to improve the animation.
So, from a franchise standpoint, no plans in 2019 to launch this as an online game, correct? And I guess the second part of that question is, uh, how when would you, if you could guess, when do you think that Maximum Football, Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 or 2020 or 21, when do you think you guys would enter the realm of online play?
That is on our roadmap for 2020.
That
Uh,
that's
it,
cool.
it 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 is, but I do have to say that doing an online game of any type, be it sports game or any other type of game, is an enormous undertaking. They are very expensive, and when it comes to making a sports game online, the amount of work involved in making it actually playable is just about as much effort as went into making the game in the first place. It's a huge undertaking. So it is on our roadmap for 2020. Being able to accomplish that goal is really dependent on how well 2019 does in terms of revenue, because as I said, the whole budget of the studio and what we're allowed to do and what we can afford to do comes purely from sales. So um, that's kind of how we have to go about doing that.
Sure. Now, sales. Very interesting. You hit on that. So, do you guys have any type of a price? Are you at liberty to discuss any type of pricing for this year's version of the game?
Well, it's not going to be $60. So that's going to be one thing that we're striving to keep it as affordable as we can. We're not quite yet in a position, I think, where we could fairly demand that kind of price tag. We don't have a lot of the bells and whistles that our competitors do, but I think we are probably looking at something in and around the mid to late $20.
Well, it's funny. You said you don't have the bells and whistles, but yet you seem to be one of the more connected to the community type companies, especially for a game development or for a sports game development company. You guys are really down there. I know I myself really appreciate the just the ease of access it is to kind of communicate with you guys either through Operation Sports or Twitter, and then the information you're releasing, the Patreon program that you guys have, and you do have a few different tiers of that. So I think that in itself is something pretty special about Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019. So just as you guys grow and become bigger, I guess from a fan standpoint or a gamer standpoint, don't lose your roots. I guess would be my advice to you or my hope for the company.
Well, I look at I look at a lot of the horror stories that come out of other titles and other companies. I'm one of those people that gets infuriated when I read stories about big AAA game studios generating record profits, but then they let go 200 people. Uh, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I would be ashamed of myself if I ever found myself doing that. So I guess you can take that as an answer.
Oh, so you're a developer. You're a developer who has a heart.
I
um,
suppose.
so with that heart in mind, who's doing the testing for these two console versions of the game for PlayStation and Xbox? Who's doing that quality assurance for you?
So we have a facility at McMaster uh, University in Hamilton, and we're using right now for this stage of development because we're kind of only about a third of the way through. I mean, we don't even a lot of our dynasty screens don't even have artwork in them yet. They're just great big buttons and spews a bunch of text in front of the screen. There's no final artwork or layout of the content. So for the sake of if I push this button, what kind of statistics do I see pop up on the screen? We're using computer science students at McMaster. We have a group of players from the McMaster Marauders, which is a U Sport college team. They are going over the game and doing what they're doing. We are working on trying to find a way to get the game into the hands of some of our Patreon people because they have a lot of good ideas and they have a very good understanding of dynasty modes. So we want to get the game into their hands. We're just trying to figure out how to do that. So at this stage of the game, everything is done in-house. And as we get further and further along, we're going to start bringing people into the studio and sitting down and inside the games room and let them go at it.
I think that's a great idea. The Patreon program obviously involves a lot of the fans that that want to be a part of this. They want to see you succeed. They want to help you, obviously, financially. They're going to buy your product. They're going to play your product. So I think that is a brilliant idea, getting the gamers involved. And if you can somehow get them to be able to test the game, find any potential flaws, or offer any type of advice that really could propel the franchise into the future, I think that's a brilliant idea, man. I really do.
Well, it is something we're trying to do. There are some challenges with the fact that it's a console game and getting a console game onto retail boxes before it's certified can be a challenge. But we'll figure something out.
Awesome. Well, Dave, I really appreciate your time. It was fun to sit down. I'd like to sit down again with you again sometime. I know Alpha had some questions for you, but date night kind of trumped you. I'm sorry about that, but but
Oh,
I'd like.
no worries. I'm glad glad I could answer your questions. I hope we didn't lose too much with the technology challenges of tonight, but I hope I answered some questions for you.
Yeah, you did a fantastic job. It's probably on my end, my first time producing here. So I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed sitting down with you and talking, learning about Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019, and learning about yourself and how you got started in the industry. So I definitely like to sit down again with you if you have the time, as as it gets closer to a release date, and talk about some of the things that are going on.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always happy to talk about the game, and if anybody's interested in finding out a little bit more, you can follow us on Twitter at Canuck GS. That's Golf Sierra, for the Canuck Play Twitter account. You can also follow the Maximum Football Twitter account at Max Football Game. We have a Patreon. It's also Max Football Game, and from there you'll be able to find us on Discord, and you'll be able to find us on Instagram and a whole bunch of other places. So if you're interested, everybody check us out.
And if it's okay with you, Dave, I'll put a link on our website and kind of point people to all the solutions for your franchise.
Absolutely, of course.
Awesome. Well, Dave, you have a great night. Good luck with the production of this year's game. I can't wait to see it. Can't wait to get my hands on it.
I can't wait myself.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Dave.
Oh, really good interview there, Collins. What'd you think?
Yeah, honestly, I'm excited for it. I can't wait to get my hands on it. I know me and my roommates are gonna be, battling against each other once we can play it. I'm excited because I've always liked to create my own uniforms, team name, stuff like that. So that's gonna be real cool. Checking out the Canadian football rules is gonna be interesting, and then even just bringing back college style football. I'm excited for that.
Yeah, I'm really curious. I don't know much about Canadian football, and I want to try it. I want to see what it looks like. And then, Dave is just he has so much invested into this. I mean, he's not even earning a paycheck, so it's almost like a hobby versus a future investment. And it's his only game he's producing here, so I think this is really cool. I think this is going to be a big success.
I hope so, and I think so as well. Indie games, some are absolutely fantastic, and I think this absolutely has the potential to be a great game. So yeah, I'm excited. I can't wait to check it out. I can't wait to tell people about it. We all need to. It's something new, and it's something that's going to be great.
Yeah, and even options too when it comes to football. You've got Madden out there. Madden's kind of the king right now of football. But you do have you have your Axis now. You have Doug Flutie's Maximum Football. They had 2018. Now you have 2019 coming out, and it looks like leaps and bounds better than last year's version, and that's pretty amazing. I just can't believe kind of the leap that they're making this year.
I think they're making a giant leap, especially within a year of their last release. Video games come out all the time yearly. We look at Call of Duties, we look at Maddens, and sometimes people feel like the games are being recycled. People definitely won't feel that way this time around. This game's going to be a brand new, polished, all around look.
Yeah, and I know he didn't confirm a price, but he said around the $20 market. I mean, a game in today's console for $20, a sports game, that's pretty awesome. I'm looking forward to it. I'm definitely going to drop $20 on that game.
Definitely, I urge people to go check out the Patreon as well. $2 a month, and then there's obviously higher tiers, but if you get into lifetime donations, and reach certain marks, you can get a Maximum Football jersey. I think one of them said that you can even create your within the game's release itself, you'll be a player at your own position with your own jersey number on the team that you choose, and that's just not on your copy. That'll be on all the copies. For what it seems like, so you could be your own player in a video game.
Yeah, I think that's a great. I think it's a great idea. I'm sure other games companies are doing this or have done this with the Patreon and involving the community, but I guess from playing a Madden game for so long, I don't see it like what what Dave's doing with Maximum Football. It just kind of blows my mind that he can get the community involved this much. I just really think it's cool.
I think a lot of people within the Madden community and the sports community, they're passionate. I've been playing Madden for a long time, and it's something that every year, these people look for a game to play, and every game has its ups and downs. Madden gets, people get tired of Madden. So I think when people have that second option, it'll be real comforting. It'll be a second game to go to, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
With that being said, with a release of September, what I want to do from a Soden Bowl standpoint is I want to hold a tournament, much like we're doing with Access. I want to hold a tournament, and I want to give away at least 5 free copies to the community of Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019. At least 5. I know I'm going to personally purchase the game myself for me because I'm going to play this game, but I want to give away at least 5 copies. Let some of the guys in the community try this game, and let's talk about our NCAA or college online franchise or your Canadian football experience. And I'm sure if you're following these guys on Twitter or you're part of the Patreon program, you guys can provide feedback and make it even better for next year. And imagine a 2020 Doug Flutie's Maximum Football being an online dynasty. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, 100%. It's extremely exciting. I think there's a lot of opportunity with it. We'll be able to do a lot of great things. I'm excited, beyond this year to see where we'll go, especially when the online gameplay comes, and that's all going to be a process of how people come out and support this game, and that's what's really important. You're not supporting just this year. You're supporting, future years, and you're supporting, Dave and his team to grow and be able to grow the game and make it even better year by year.
So kind of getting back to Soden Bowl here. Soden Bowl Sim League. So far through the season, who has, in your opinion, been the most dominant offense and the most dominant defense in the league so far?
To start, I could tell you who has not been the most dominant offense, and that's unfortunately me down in Houston. I traded Hopkins today. We brought in talent McKinnon, and we brought in Pedersen real quick. People have been asking why I did that. It's just I probably wouldn't get the production out of Hopkins that I should be. But other than that, offensive wise, there's a lot of good teams. We got a lot of players that are performing really well. We have Cam Newton with 13 touchdowns, Derek Carr with 12 as of the last Daddy Leagues update. Unfortunately, you got other teams. Baker Mayfield, Andy Dalton, Andrew Luck. A lot of those guys are struggling. So it's been interesting to see the quarterback play. Especially with the rookies, nobody's really exactly been a big star yet. But yeah, no, it's been a fun season so far.
So who has been the better defense that you've seen so far in the league?
Definitely got to say, one of the best defensive players so far has been Daniel Hunter. So, I got to go with his squad down there. He's had 11 sacks within his first 4 games. Week 1, he had 5 sacks, 7 tackles, forced fumble. Week 3, he had 4